Yeah.
Good evening. Hope you're all doing well. Today we're learning Maseches Kiddushin Daf Mem Dalid, and we are starting 5 or 6 lines from the bottom of Mem Gimel Amud Beis. Just to bring us to an appropriate starting point, 2/3 of the way down in Mem Gimel Amud Beis, the shiur that I taught to myself this morning. There we discussed at the. I just said it. At that time, it was all by myself, by my lonesome at that back table right there. So there, this morning, we learned about a sugya about a nara me'urasa. And according to the Tanakama, he had said, he ve'avi makablan as gita, that both the daughter, the nara, and the father can accept the get. Rabbi Yehuda said you can't have two people do that. Only the father can receive the get. And then there's a machlokas, Reish Lakish and Rav Yochanan about where the machlokas applies. Do we say that it only applies by gittin, or does the machlokas also apply by kiddushin? So Rav Yochanan was of the opinion. Rav Yochanan says, "Amar machlokas legerushin, aval lekiddushin divrei hakol aviha velohi." When it comes to kiddushin, he was stark about it. Only the father when she's a nara, nobody else, not her, not anybody else. Amar Rabbi Yossi, this is approach number 1. Amar Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Chanina, my time is Rabbi Yochanan, aliba d'Rabbanan. Why is it that Rabbi Yochanan was of the opinion that everyone agrees, even the Rabbanan agree, that when it comes to kiddushin, only the father can receive kiddushin? Says the Gemara, because gerushin demachneses atzma l'reshus aviha. When there's a gerushin, she's leaving her husband. She's a nara merusa. She's young when she's leaving the marriage. So then she's returning back to her father. Then bein hi uvein avia. Then it doesn't matter who does the receiving. It can be the nara herself, or it can be the father. But kiddushin, mem gimel amud beis, 3 lines from the bottom. When it comes to kiddushin demafkat atzma l'reshus avia, by kiddushin, that means that the father is losing his daughter. The daughter is marrying and moving out of the house. Then aviha velohi, only the father. It's interesting. It almost sounds like an emotional lens that we're looking at. Is the daughter coming home? In which case they can both have latitude to accept the get. Or if it's kiddushin, she's leaving the house, therefore only the father. A very unique lens. We're going to reject this soon, but the Gemara does posit this as a possibility. Says the Gemara, wait 1 second. Throw back to Yevamos. V'harei maimer demafkas asma mirshus avia. When it comes to Maimer, which is Kiddushin derabanan, when a woman is a Shomeres Yavam, Kiddushin derabanan, there we see that she is in fact leaving her house, Vitnan, or possibly Vitanya. This might be a Brisa. As we turn to the top of Memdal Merav, Ketana min ha'erusin, ein osin ba Maimer alamidas avia, that if you have a child from Erusin, that there's no Maimer by her. And v'hanara, if you have a Nara, bein midas atzma, bein midas avia. So this seems to be very difficult with the shita of Rabbi Yochanan, because Rabbi Yochanan was of the opinion that only a father is allowed to do that, to do kiddushin. Over here it says by Maimer that it's not just the father, it's everybody. So we therefore reject answer number 1, approach number 1 in Rabbi Yochanan. And on Memdal 5 lines down, 4 lines down, the Gemara says, Eli itmar hachi itmar. If you're going to quote the Memra of Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina, please do it right. And the Gemara says this is a more appropriate version of understanding of Rabbi Yochanan. Here is the right way to understand it. Why is it that he says that Kiddushin has to be only by the father and the daughter is not allowed to do Kiddushin? Says the Gemara, Kiddushin dimi daita avia velohi. When it comes to Kiddushin, where we need her opinion, so the father represents, no problem. But Gerushin de Bal Korcha, because divorce can happen even against her will, so then no need for the father to intervene. We don't need a better decision or a worse decision to be made. The father can't stop the get from happening because the get can be given Bal Korcha. Therefore, bein hi, bein avia. So this is a reasonable answer. This explains Rav Yochanan as to why Rav Yochanan says by Kiddushin it's only the father, because we need some good, healthy decision-making over here. She's a young girl. She's a Nara Me'urasa. She's 11 and a half, 12 years old. She's a young child. Maybe only today's 11 and a half and 12-year-olds are not so sophisticated. I'm sure in the times of the Gemara, they were a little bit better off than our kids. But nevertheless, the Gemara says that this is the Svara of Rabbi Yochanan. And the Gemara questions this. Wait 1 second. We already saw Maimer from the bottom of the page. When it comes to Maimer, we see that Maimer can be done even with the daughter and not only with the father, and Maimer similar to Kiddushin. So the Gemara says, no, Hasan b'Maimer de Bal Korcha, a very unique shita. And this is the shita of Rebbe, which we learned about in Maseches Yevamos on Daf Yomi. I'm sure you all remember it distinctly, because I don't. Says the Gemara, Hasan b'maimer de bal korcha, there is a scenario where maimer, Kiddushin derabanan, by a shomeres yavam, can be done against her will. Just a Kiddushin derabanan can be done against her will. We're not talking about, we understand that the bia is allowed to take place bal korcha, which is a difficult concept for us to understand. But when a woman is in a shomeres yavam, she can be forced into the scenario of getting married. The Rebbe, in regards to maimer, what does Rebbe hold? The Tanya. 10 lines down, Osa Maimer Biavimto Shalomi Daita. Let's say Maimer is done to a Shomeres Yavam. She doesn't even know it took place. Rabbi Omer Kana. Maimer can be against her will. And that's why we have a scenario where Maimer is not Akasha against Rav Yochanan. We wanted to say that Rav Yochanan was of the opinion that Kiddushin only works for the father and not for the daughter. What about Maimer? No, we're not talking about regular Maimer. We're talking about Maimer according to Rebbe. And Maimer, according to Rebbe, is that the Maimer can even be done Bal Korcha. My time with the Rebbe. Why is it that Rebbe holds that there is such a thing as Maimer Bal Korcha, where you can get engaged halachically midrabanan as a shomeres yavam Bal Korcha? Says the Gemara, because Gomar, lost my place here. The Rebbe, my time with the Rebbe. What is the reason why Rebbe holds what he holds? Because Gomar Bia Diyavama. We learn our bia from Yavama, ma bia diavama bal korcha. Just like when it comes to tashmish amita that binds a shomeres yavam to a yavam, that's against her will. Avacha, here by Maimer too, nami bal korcha. Very unique shita. And that's Rebbe's svara, is that when we are talking about the similarities of Maimer, what are we going to compare it to? He says we should compare it to Yibum, because Yibum's a chiddush just like Maimer's a chiddush. Very good.
What's the shot? Yibum bal korcha.
That's what it sounds like. That's what it sounds like. Halacha l'maisa, if a woman is a shomeres yavam, her yavam can force her into intimacy, and then they'll be married.
And I think it means if he does, then
it still counts. It's not. Yes,
yibum,
it binds them. It binds them. Violations are not something we promote. It's an effective form of transacting this marriage. It's an uncommon marriage, so we have to remember that it's not a staple. Yeah. So that's what the Gemara says. And the Rabbanan, how do they hold in regards to Maimer? So in regards to Maimer, Sabra Yalfinan Mikidushin. Look, it's true that Maimer is unique and Yibum is unique, but Maimer is closer to Kiddushin than it is to Yibum. So therefore, the Rabbanan, what do they say? Sabra Yalfinan Mikidushin, Makidushin Demidaita, Afachanami. In regards to Maimer, it's midaita, but my kamiflage. How do we understand the underpinnings of this machlokes Rebbe and the Rabban? And the Gemara says, Rebbe savar mili diavama, mi yavama, havale. Because Maimer is part of Yavama, and because Yibum is part of Yavama, so therefore we should learn Maimer from Yibum. The Rabbanan Sabre, the rabbis are of the opinion that things are a little bit different. Rabbanan Sabre, Kiddushin, mi Kiddushin, nami havale. That we're able to learn out Kiddushin, Maimer from the world of Kiddushin, and that is a little bit of a better match because Maimer is Kiddushin derabanan and Kiddushin is Kiddushin, and they are a little bit better aligned. So that's what the Gemara says, and that therefore is an acceptable answer, and therefore Rav Yochanan's shita stands. What that means, what that means is that according to the second approach of Rav Yossi, Reb Chanina, 5 lines down on this page, he says that Kiddushin, which requires her das, so therefore only the father can be involved because he has to make the big decisions. But Gerushin, which is against her will, which is even against her will, she can even be involved. And Hachanami Mistabra, this second approach that we've learned of Rav Yossi, Reb Chanina is logical because the commentaries of Rav Yochanan, like the way we just said above, Midikatani Seifa, because of what the Seifa says. The Seifa says, Ma she'ein kain b'Kiddushin. This is also found in the parentheses 3 lines down from the top of the page. Masha ein ken b'Kiddushin. So Ella says the Gemara, if this is true, the Rav Yochanan is right, and we've brought a raya accordingly. The Rav Yochanan is right. Ella nema te'avituv to the Reish Lakish. Good. So then, if Rav Yochanan's right, then let's reject the sheet of Reish Lakish and move on. Why is it that we're still assuming that there's a machlokes between the two of them? If we have such a great Mari Makom, that the Mishnah writes Masha ein kain b'Kiddushin, which is a beautiful raya for Rav Yochanan, that we see the Kiddushin is different than Gerushin, then perhaps that's a great raya brura against Reish Lakish. Says the Gemara, no, Amar Lach Reish Lakish, Hamani, no, This brisa which says Masha'en kin bekiddushin, whose shita is that is Rabbi Yehuda. Amar ein shtei yadayim zochos ke'achas. You're not allowed to have two people receiving a get for someone. That was a line we saw earlier. It says Gemara, wait 1 second. Rabbi Yehuda, what then does he mean by Masha'en kin bekiddushin? That's the wrong language altogether. If what Rabbi Yehuda was trying to say is you can't have two people accepting gerushin, then it shouldn't have said Masha'en kin bekiddushin. It should have said Masha'en kin begerushin. The language is wrong. Says the Gemara, Masha'en kin begerushin miboyle. Says the Gemara, Nachanami, you're absolutely right. But I did the Tana Maimer de Rami the Kiddushin, Tana Nami Masha'en kin bekiddushin. Because we were talking about Maimer as it relates to Kiddushin, we also said the phrase of Masha'en kin bekiddushin. So that's not really a kasha on Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara then asks on behalf of Rabbi Yehuda, 2/3 of the way down, a little bit less. Rabbi Yehuda, Maishna Maimer. Why is it that Maimer is different according to Rabbi Yehuda? Because Rabbi Yehuda doesn't seem to be bothered by the fact that Maimer had different dinim. Rabbi Yehuda said that there's no such thing as two people who are zochos. You can't have two people doing the same receiving transaction on behalf of a woman. But by Maimer, we see that. So what does Rabbi Yehuda do with that? Says the Gemara 5 lines before the white lines. Holus kuka ve'omedes, that the rules of Maimer are different because her scenario was a forced scenario. Because her husband died and she had no children, she fell in yibum to her brother-in-law. The scenario is an uncommon scenario, so she's the kuka ve'omedes. So says the Gemara, if that's true, hashta da'asis lahachi, then we can undo some of the complexities of our Gemara. Because the Gemara says, if it's true that the case of Maimer's whole is a kuka v'omedes, Rabbi Yochanan lo tik shelach meikara, then there should never have been a question that was ever asked against Rabbi Yochanan. Why not? Because as the Gemara says, shiny Maimer whole is a kuka v'omedes, and therefore the Gemara concludes, seemingly like Rabbi Yochanan, that we hold that when it comes to gittin. So let's just go back to the brisa where we started from today by the Tanana, which is a little bit more than halfway down on Mem Gimel Amud Beis. There, a Nara Mu'rasa, she and her father can accept a get, and according to Rav Yochanan, that machlokas doesn't apply by Kiddushin. Basically, by Kiddushin, it's only the father who's able to receive. Tanan, we have a Mishnah, and this is 2/3 of the way down, 3 lines before the wide lines, now 2 lines before the wide lines on Mem Daled Amud Aleph. Says the Gemara, Ish Mekadesh es pitok shinara bo v'shlucha. A man is able to marry off his daughter when she's a nara. He is allowed to do that, and he can also get a messenger. What's the diuk from this? Bo v'shlucho in. Only he can do this, and only his messenger can do this. However, bo v'shlucha lo. But when it comes to the nara who is being married off by her father, she is not allowed to be the recipient. Only the father is, and she's not allowed to have a messenger. And this is tiyufta deresh lakish. Why is this tiyufta deresh lakish? Because what did we say was the shita of Rabbi Yochanan, that only the father can be makabel kedushin. If only the father can be makabel kedushin, and over here we see that she ba'u v'shlucha is not allowed. That sounds just like Rabbi Yochanan. That's a kasha on Resh Lakish. Says the Gemara, first of the long lines, Resh Lakish, don't worry. Hanami Rabbi Yehuda. Says the Gemara, you cannot establish this like Rabbi Yehuda. Mukmas like Rabbi Yehuda. Are you really able to establish this like the shita of Rabbi Yehuda? After all, Vaktani Seifa, not Seifa in our brisa, but Seifa much later in the Masechta. Actually, not much later, just a couple blot away. Memvav, next Mishnah. Says the Gemara, Vaktani Seifa, we can't say that our brisa is like Rabbi Yehuda because Ha'omer le'isha iskachi li b'tmarazu. A man says, I'd like you to marry me with this particular date, the fruit. And then he's kachi libazu, he gives her another fruit, another date to marry with them. And what we don't see in our Gemara is what we will see down the road, which is that each of these were pachos mishava pruta, not a big spender on the whole proposal thing. That says the Gemara, Barminan Mantani iskachi. Who's the author of the one who says that we look at these 2 parts of Kiddushin as separate? Iskachi libitmarazu, and then a minute later he says iskachi libitmarazu. He gave her 2 dates, 2 of these fruits that are not shava, they're not shava pruta. So who's the author of this? Amar Rabba Reb Shimon to Amar Ad Sheyomar Shua L'Kol Echad VeEchad. According to Reb Shimon, he must be the author here because he says that when a person is making a shvua in an unrelated area of halacha, we'll dig into this more in a moment. But let's say that I'm making a shvua that I don't owe any of you money, and I say I make a shvua that I don't owe any of you money. One shvua, all the people. And Reb Shimon says no. When you say, I make a shvua for you, I make a shvua for you, a shvua for you, then we're actually talking. So what does Reb Shimon say? It must be that Reb Shimon is the author of our Mishnah because Ad Shemar Shvua L'Kol Echad VeEchad. He said he's kachi twice. That's the same thing as saying Shavua twice, Shavua to you and Shavua to you. So therefore, we have to view them as distinct things. That's classic Rav Shimon. If you want to say that in general we hold like Rav Yehuda, but when we specify like Hiskachi, we hold like Rav Shimon. When we savar la, Rav Yehuda and Rav Shimon can't even stand in the same room on this topic because V'altanya, 3/4 of the way down, 5 lines into the wide lines. Zehaklal, when we are talking about a case scenario of me promising that I don't owe any of you money, there is a 4-way machlokes tanoim. And says the Gemara klal, as a general rule, if I am broad and I say I owe none of you money, eino chayev ela achas. If it's found out that I'm lying, it's only one lie, even though I lied about the 8 of you. However, says the Gemara, parat, if I am detailed, if I say Rab and Yaakov and my father and Mark, if I go all the way around, what does Rabbi Yehuda say? Rabbi Yehuda Omer, no, shvua lo lach. I first have to say the word shvua, and I say shvua not to Rab, not to Yaakov, right? And I say shvua in the beginning, and then I add all the names. Then chayav al kol achas v'achas. And Rabbi Lazar Omer, no, the shvua, the word is at the end. Lo lach, shvua. Shvua is at the end. So big machlokas chayav al kol achas v'achas. And now here's the shita that contrasts with Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Shimon Omer lo olam eino chayav ad shomer shvua al kol echad ve'echad. Rabbi Yehuda, a couple of lines ago, is of the opinion of the word shvua, followed by everybody's names, and then I'd be chayav. I would be chayav 8 times over for this room. Rabbi Shimon says, no, shvua that I don't know you. Shvua that I don't know you. The word shvua is said 8 times, then you're chayav 8 times. So big machlokas, the two of them can't even play in the same sandbox. There's no way that they are splitting shitas on our Mishnah. So therefore, says the Gemara, you're right. Elakula Rabbi Shimon he uveshlichu savar lak Rabbi Yehuda. What? If you say the word shvua once, then you get shvua once. If I make one shvua in the whole room, l'chora.
So who gets it? Which of us in the room?
The shvua is that I owe you nothing. The shvua is that I don't owe any of you money. So none of you are going to get money out of this transaction, but I'm going to get an onesh. How many times am I getting an onesh of lying? So if I say shvua to Yaakov and I say nothing else to you, or shvua to Yaakov and the rest of you, that's only one isser. That's only one isser. So says the Gemara, therefore, because Reb Shimon and Reb Yehuda can't split this meeting exactly, they can't split this Mishnah the same way. Elakula Reb Shimon, he really our Mishnah, maybe it's possibly all Reb Shimon and not Reb Yehuda at all. Uveshlichus savar lak Reb Yehuda. And when it comes to shlichus, it's possible that we hold like Reb Yehuda that a nara cannot function as a shliach for her father, like was implied in the beginning of this Mishnah. So the Maisa, how do we paskin? Because this is quite confusing. We don't know if we paskin like Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda is one shita. What about the other 4 shitas? So the Gemara tells a story. Ravasi lo al lebei medrasha. Ravasi was not in the base medrash one particular day. I presume it was part of his scheduled, going to the dentist days. Wasn't in the base medrash. Ashkeched Reb Zera bumped into Reb Zera and said, "Hey, Amar le, my Amar ha'idna bei medrash. I missed yeshiva today. What did I miss?" Amar le, af analo ayel. I was also ditching. Could you imagine such a conversation with these 2 great Amoraim? This must have been so uncommon for them to miss shiur. How often would this happen? So the Gemara doesn't discuss what was going on here, but that's they both missed. Yeah. By the way, I never skip shiur. You just give it at a different time. Yeah, you're the one who ditches in the back. So if you're gonna dish it out, just be ready to take it back. Love you like a brother.
It was faster than I expected.
It was faster than I expected too. But Yom Kippur is right on my heels, so I'm feeling good about it. That's right. And you listen today. I'm very proud of you.
Only because I was in shul.
Not only, you just own it. It's good. All right, so he says, Reb Zera says, I also wasn't in the base medrash, but Rav Avin Rav Avin did show up. The Amar Chavrusa Kula ki Rabbi Yochanan. The Chavrusa, a very unique word, but here it's not a unique word, it's a unique word in this phraseology. It basically means that everyone agrees with the Shita of Rav Yochanan. And listen to what happened. Vitzavach Reish Lakish ki Kruchia. Reish Lakish was screaming like a bird. What are you talking about? How can you say Gerushin and Kiddushin are different? The Yotzav Ha'isa. We know that. We know the hekesh that we have in Chumash. We have the Yotzav Ha'isa, Makish Yitzia Lehavaya. Reish Lakish is fuming. What do you mean we paskin like Rav Yochanan? This is crazy. What about the basic Mar Mikomos? The Leika de Ashkach Be. Nobody listened to him. So that means, seemingly, we paskin like Rav Yochanan, that when it comes to getting, that's where we have a machlokas. But by Kiddushin, everyone agrees that only the father is able to represent the Na'ara Me'urasa. So Amar Le, Rabbi Avin Bar Samchahu. This Rabbi Avin, who was in shiur, can we rely on him? Amar Le, he says, yes, we can rely on him. Kimin Yama Litignihu. It's straight from the sea to the frying pan, which was a colloquialism of the day. Basically, no time has transpired since I heard that in yeshiva. Rav Avin told me this, and then I heard perfectly, and I'm just repeating to you, definitely reliable, and therefore we paskin like Rav Yochanan. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, Ana, Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, who was also in the shiur, he says, Ana, I don't know. Lo Rabbi Avin, Rabbi Chia, v'lo Rabbi Avin Bar Kana, Eli Rabbi Avin Stam. I don't know which Rabbi Avin it was who was being quoted as saying that we hold like Rabbi Yochanan. You know, the one who said, Rabbi Yochanan's right, and we don't paskin like Rish Lakish. So it says the Gemara, L'may nafkamina. Okay, this Rav Avin, that Rav Avin. No, we know halacha l'maisa that we paskin like Rabbi Yochanan. So the Gemara says, to wrap up this sugya, Limirma didei adidei. It's very helpful to know which Rav Avin it is, because very often throughout Shas, we find that Amoraim have seeming contradictions, and we have to answer them. So if I know which Rav Avin it is, and I find the seeming contradiction, I need to know, is it Rav Avin Breb Chia, or is it Rav Avin Breb Kana? So that would be the nafkamina. But l'maisa, we don't know which Rav Avin it was. We just spoke loosely about which Rav Avin it was. It was Rav Avin. We just don't know which one.
He's just saying what happened in the base measure stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So why do you?
Yeah, because it's in the name of Rav Avin. You're asking a great question. But if you look through like Shas in general, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav, right? Amar Rav Gidol, Amar Rav. All of these cases, Rav Gidol is taking achrayas for quoting in the name of his Rebbe. So Rav Avin is taking achrayas. And we ask questions like that all the time in Shas about the person who asked the question, even though it was b'shem an earlier Amor.
From the Gemara that it was only because you can believe him because he didn't have time to forget, but you didn't get a lot of references here. You know what I mean?
Meaning it didn't say Amar Ravin,
It doesn't say.
Amar Rav Yochanan.
Can we rely on Rav Avin? You know,
Yeah.
all it said is he didn't have time to forget. He came right out like the fish out of the sea into the frying pan.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I like your question better than I like my answer, but it could be that I'm right. I have no idea. All right, last line of Mem Daled Aleph. Let's continue. Says the Gemara, Bamine Rav Amir of Nachman, turning to the top of Mem Daled Mid Beis. Na'ara, Mahu shete'aseh shliach lekabel gita miyad baila. Is a Na'ara allowed to function as a shliach to receive a get from her husband? Do we say she's kiyad avia damya, or is okechatzer avia damya? Is she like her father's hand, or is she like her father's chatzer? Kiyad avia damya, is she like her father's hand? Ma avia mashvi shliach, afinami mishavya shliach. Just like the father can appoint a shliach, so too she can appoint a shliach as a na'ara. Odilma kechatzer avia damya ve'adama tegita liyad lo migrasha. Her father's field is not very helpful. It's not like the same dinim of a woman that if it's her field, she's divorced. Or if it's her father's field, it still needs to get to her hand. So do we say that a woman is like the yad of her father and therefore she can appoint a shliach just like her father can? Or do we say that this nara is like like the chatzer, in which case we have to wait until it gets to her hand? Says the Gemara, the Rava, this can't possibly be what Rava was masupak about. Why not? Because of the following case scenario. Amar Rava, kasav get unisanu biyad avda. A get was written and it was put in her eved's property. Yashanu mishmarto, if he's sleeping and he is protected, hareze get, because he is property and he is in her property and under her shmira. However, Neyor, if he's awake, then Eino get. So says the Gemara, Neyor amai Eino get. We're going to be going until about 2/3 of the way down. So the Gemara says, Neyor amai Eino get. Why is it that if the Eved is awake, that the get is not chal? Only if the Eved is asleep is the get chal. Tehav yolo chetzer mishtamer shelo l'daita. Because he's chetzer mishtameres, but now he functions on his own das. If he's sleeping, he's no different than the couch, than the chatzer, than her daled amos. But if he's awake, then his own das interferes, halachically speaking, with the acceptance of the get. No, this case is out of left field. This case is just being brought to speak to us about a chetzer mishtameres. Yeah. So So the Gemara says that the reason why by Neur, by when he's awake, it doesn't work is because then it's a Chetzer Mishtamer Shelo L'Daita. When you have a Chetzer Mishtamer Shelo L'Daita, so that doesn't work for Kabbalah Saget. And therefore, back to our sugya, the Isal Kedaitach 10, 12 lines down, Kechatzer Avia Damya. If you want to say that the Nara in the case that we started with, she's similar to her father in as much as she's like a Chatzer, Kimat Gita Liyada, Nami lo tegaresh, tahavyala chatzer mishtamer shelo l'das avia. Even she can't take it because it's shelo l'das avia. That doesn't work anyway. So pashut that the question was not about if she is kiyad avia or kechatzer avia. Ella says the Gemara leolam pshita le the kiyad avia damya. Really, everyone agrees it's like the yad avia. The hachi kami baile. Really, the question that Rava was asking from Rav Nachman. Yeah. Really, the question that Rava was asking from Rav Nachman was a little bit different. Third of the way down. Mi'alima kiyad aviha l'shavya ihi shliach olo. Do we say, yes, of course, she's in the camp of yad aviha, not chatzer aviha. Pashat that the nara is like a yad. However, is she strong enough to be like her father, and that just like her father can appoint a shliach, she can be a shliach, which is funny because her shlichus means that she receives it. Therefore, her father receives it, and therefore she's divorced. It's a very indirect but direct form. It's very odd because there's some ping-ponging happening. Olo. So says the Gemara, Eina osa shliach. She's not allowed to be a shliach. Says the Gemara, wait 1 second. You're saying that a nara is not allowed to be a shliach for her own divorce? Hold on 1 second. Esve, we have a brisa. Ktana she'amra hiskabeli giti. A ktana, not a nara. A ktana, a younger child who says to someone, I'd like you to please receive my get. She's appointing a shliach. Eino get, ad she'agia get liyada. She as a ketana will only be divorced once the get reaches her hands. What's implied from here? Hanara, forget about a ketana, but the diuk is that by a nara, someone who's a little older, what's the implication of shlichus? Hareze get. So you wanted to tell me that really Rava's question was about whether or not a nara can make herself a shliach for her own divorce. And the Gemara says that Rav Nachman answered Eina osa shlichus. Yet here we see from a diuk that if a ketana cannot do shlichus, then a nara can. Hareza get. So the Gemara says, nice try, but hacha b'mayaskinon b'she'ein lo'av. That's only true when the nara doesn't have a father. Says the Gemara, what are you talking about? I mean, the Ketani seifa, but at the end of that brisa, we have something that conflicts with what you're saying. That im amar aviha tsei v'kabli get lebiti, that when in this part of the Mishnah, amar aviha, the father says to a shliach, please go be the shliach for my daughter's get. Imratza bal yachzor bolo yachzor, and that's a quote from the Mishnah that the husband is not allowed to go back on that. What's the implication of this line? Michlal de Reisha b'diyesh la'avaskinan. You wanted to say that the Reisha was talking about where there was no father. That's not possible because the implication is Michlal that there is a father in the Reisha. So says the Gemara, not really. Halfway down on Mem Daled Amud Beis, and with this we're going to close. Chasurei mechzera v'hachik tani. Really, you misunderstood the brisa. Let's put in all of the missing words. Kitana sha'amra iskabli ligiti. You have a young girl, 6, 7, 8 years old, and she appoints a shliach to be the recipient of her get. Eino get ad she'agia get liyada. Hanara hareze get. So far, so good. That's a quote so far. But Ba'med dvarim amurim that we say that a nara is allowed to do shlichus. That's only kshe'ein la'av. A nara is allowed to be made a shliach for her own get when her father is no longer present. Aval yesh la'av, if there is a father around, ve'amar aviyat seva kabel abiti gita v'rotza ba'al lachzor lo yachzor. Only then can the father be involved, but the daughter cannot be, the nara cannot be a shliach when her father is alive. So we're going to stop right here at the 2 dots. Mirza Hashem, tomorrow night we'll pick up with a blot. This blot is just longer and the next blot is just a little shorter. So we'll be able to cover the appropriate amount of ground tomorrow night. Wishing you all a beautiful night.